Are people going to take me less seriously if I'm really comfortable? Probably. Hi, I'm Skull, and today I'm going to be helping you turn the first floor of the Abomination Vaults into an adventure that is suitable for 5 players. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm a relatively new Pathfinder 2E player myself, and when I searched for guides to turn Abomination Vaults into 5 players, I couldn't find any. I could find vague rules on how to do it, but not like a step-by-step process of the best method. So I'm going to take you through each room step by step. We're going to be using Foundry because it's a more visual way of representing the changes that you need to make. And we're also going to talk about how to slightly change the adventure to suit there being these edits to the creatures, the difficulty of the encounters, things like that. Obviously, this video will contain spoilers for the Abomination Vaults, so if you're a player, probably best you do not watch this video and instead send it to your DM so that they can get this information and ensure that you have the best time possible. Okay, so as you can see, we have the Foundry module for the Gauntlight Ruins up at the moment. So what we're going to do is just going to go each room. I'm going to tell you which changes need to be made to essentially get the experience difference back up again. Because as you have more players, you need to give them more monsters to deal with to level out the experience again. Some of the rooms aren't going to need changes, but I'll explain those rooms and why. And yeah, basically you'll be able to just go through this step by step, each room at a time, and make the same changes that I have made for your own adventure. Quick interjection here. My players are level 2 when I'm creating this video. They have been through the beginner's box. Yours might have done the same. It feels like a pretty common occurrence. So yeah, just to be aware, this is for level 2 characters, not level 1. But you can probably go through the same process for level 1 characters. So first room, the damp entrance. So this room has 3 mitflits in it, 3 gremlins. Straight out of the gate, I did not change this room. I don't think it needs changing because, as you can see here, as soon as any mitflit takes damage, they shriek in fear, cast Bane, and then flee to Area 9. Area 9 is over here. And essentially, we've already going to be buffing this encounter to make it suitable for 5 players. These mitflits run away anyway, so they're not really intended to be a proper fight. So yeah, because these mitflits run away, I don't think it's necessary to necessarily increase the amount of enemies or make them any more difficult, because they are going to be heading out and basically buffing the final boss encounter anyway. Ideally, your party kill 1, maybe 2 if they have good initiative before they get out, so they're not like overcharging that later encounter. But yeah, first room, I do not believe needs any changes. The bridge has no enemies to encounter, so that's fine. Let me change it to daytime so that you guys can see what's going on a little bit better. And we're loading. Okay. So in the area 4, the Maggot Training Hall, in this area you would typically have 3 mitflits and 1 Mudlicker Maggot to create an experience amount of 80 after the fight. Because of our 5th players, we need to increase this encounter to that relevant amount. If I select 3 mitflits and 1 Mudlicker, you can see that they would only be getting 50 experience. So what we've done to increase this is we've added a 4th mitflit and a 2nd maggot, which gets us to the 80 experience that they are intended to retrieve from this encounter. Not much needs changing in terms of the writing in this one. There's just more mitflits and more maggots than there were supposed to be. So when you read the intro description and start talking about the mitflits that are here, just mention the fact there's a few more of them. You can see that I've actually written more into the initial description of the room to make up for this amend. So yep, that's this room dealt with. In Area 5, the maggot stable, typically you would have 2 maggots, which would be a low 60 experience encounter. Because of our 5 players, if we only have those 2 maggots... sorry, let me delete this. And then redo it. That would only be 30 experience. We're going for 60. I added another maggot, which got us to 48 experience and a low threat. The reason I didn't add another is because that takes us into moderate and above the 60. So I don't think it's necessary to have that that 4th one here. So they will be getting a little bit less experience than they are intended to get out of this fight. But the threat level remains the intended threat level. With the writing here, nothing really needs to change. Just say that 3 maggots explode out of the frog corpse instead of 2. For the fly pen, area 6, with this one you're expected to have 2 flies. The 2 flies create an encounter that is a moderate 80 experience fight. I didn't want to add additional flies to this. Adding additional flies would have changed the story a little too much, because they already have the rather interesting situation where the mid-flits think they have 1 fly that changes colour, but it's actually 2 flies. Adding like a 3rd or even a 4th would have just made that story too messy. So instead, I've added that there are 2 mud flicker maggots which are hiding up in the rafters. This takes us to the exact 80 experience that they need for this encounter. And the way I flavoured this is essentially they're sat up in the rafters, and after a round of combat they jump down. If somebody is using the search exploration action, and you roll their secret perception check and they get a 19, they can see the 2 maggots up in the rafters and can account for that, essentially. So that is this room dealt with. So haunts are a weird one, right? Haunts have got an experience and threat level associated with them. However, I felt that changing a haunt doesn't necessarily make sense. The reason for that is because haunts tend to affect everybody in an area based on varying situations. It's not a case of increasing the amount of enemies, which is typically how you would just experience. And I can't really justify increasing the damage or the severity, the DCs, because haunts don't affect combat in a similar way that an encounter with monsters would. Your players don't have more experience. Sorry, your players don't have more hit points just because there's more of them. They don't have better armor classes. They don't have better saving throws. They just have an additional person to account for. But a lot of haunts affect everybody in an area. So I do not think you need to increase the damage of haunts, increase the difficulty of their DCs. I don't think any of that is necessary. If you do find your players are falling behind on experience, I would honestly recommend just giving them the expected experience. Obviously, with there being 5 players, this is put down to only 32 experience. My players are also level 2, I should say, so they're getting even less. But the haunt itself doesn't need to be stronger or more damaging to account for that, because it's affecting everybody who's in the area. So for this, if they look like they're falling behind on experience, I'm going to just give them the intended experience instead of the actual experience they would get. So that's what I'd recommend for haunts. Don't buff them up, because an additional player doesn't mean the players can survive more individually. Pushing over to Area 11, the Gauntlight base, same thing. Don't increase the damage from this. Don't do anything that's going to make this more difficult. Just give them the experience that they should be receiving, as opposed to what they are experiencing, the experience they would gain based on the amount of players. Making these more difficult isn't going to add challenge based on the amount of players. It's going to add challenge based on the characters' levels and how much HP they have and stuff, which isn't really what we want to do. Moving over to the Giant Scorpion room, the Area 14, this is already said as a pretty very dangerous encounter, especially for level 1 characters. If you've done the beginner's box, your characters will be level 2. It's still dangerous for them as well. So you don't need to increase this in difficulty unless you're purely trying to do it for the sake of experience. Obviously, it wants this encounter to be worth 80 and be a moderate threat. It's currently a low threat with a 48 experience because of my players' levels and the amount of them. So what I've done to increase this is I've put 2 Mitflits in here, which get us up to moderate and put us to level to an experience award of 72. And the flavor that I've added here is that these 2 Mitflits are basically stuck in this room. They're hiding from the rather aggressive Scorpion. But they do care about Scorpion as it's their first substantial find, as they're part of their plan to send insects to attack the town of Atari. So when a fight breaks out, if a fight breaks out, the players will be attacking the Scorpion. The Mitflits will be attacking the players, trying to defend their Scorpion. This encounter does say that the Scorpion will not follow the players out of this room. I think the Mitflits would follow them out of this room. So you basically get this interesting dynamic where the players engage a Scorpion, get jumped by the 2 Mitflits who are both scared, but also trying to save the Scorpion that they are scared of because it's an important part of their plan. And then when the players get a little bit overwhelmed, if that happens, they retreat out, the Mitflits follow them out, Scorpion doesn't, and then the players can kill the Mitflits and then decide whether to re-engage with the Scorpion or not. Okay, in the Nimbleoth's Shrine, Area 15, the encounter is for 2 Corpse Lights, which is a severe 120 experience fight. These 2 Mitflits, these 2 Corpse Lights on their own that are both possessed to the skeletons are only a moderate encounter with a 64 experience reward right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the advice that one of them will go and claim the corpse of the bandit that is stuck in this room, and we're going to make a 3rd corpse light be in this room, and they are already possessing that bandit. So the players might enter through this back room, push the bandit to the side. They can even search the bandit, but the bandit will then rise when the other 2 corpse light rise to add a 3rd enemy to the field, putting us up to a severe threat. We're not quite at that 120 experience, but I feel like these things are nasty enough that a level 1 or level 2 party will deal with it. It will already be quite a hard fight, and we don't want to push it too far. And again, you know, if experience starts to fall behind, then you can start just giving them the intended if it's close enough. You know, if the threat level matches, I'd say you're doing good enough to at least make the fights their intended difficulty, even if the experience doesn't quite even up. Okay. Pushing down to Area 8, the Sinkhole. Typically, there would be 4 Mitflits in this room. They would be down here fighting. All we're going to do here is add 2 more Mitflits to get us to 72 experience and a moderate fight. The intended is 80. You're close enough here that this should be fine. You don't have to change anything with the story here. There's just an additional 2 Mitflits that are in this hole fighting over mushrooms. In the Mudlicker Throne Room, Area 10, the way I've buffed this up is a little strange. Also, we have the boss, we have Bite, and we have 2 Mitflits as standard, and that puts us initially to a severe 120 experience fight. What I have done to bring this up, because as standard, these 4 dudes are only a moderate fight of 72. I added 2 more Mitflits, which put us to a severe 96 experience fight, and then I also added a maggot to this room to put us to 112. Not quite making it to that 120, but this is going to be a difficult fight, worthy of being a boss fight. And the change to flavor is essentially we have the boss probably awaiting your party if the Mitflits manage to warn them. He has Bite by his side. And these 2 Mitflits are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is being attentive waiting on their boss. And then the 3 new creatures that we added, these 2 Mitflits, are training this Mudlicker Maggot like they are in the main entrance hall, except they're doing a little small training in front of the boss in this corner over here. And that way we've buffed it up to severe. We've tried to get the experience as close as we can. This is going to be difficult. There's a lot of characters on the field right now, and action economy is a thing. So this is going to be a difficult fight. If you feel like it's a little too much for your players, get rid of the Maggot, get rid of a few Mitflits. You have a few options here to tone it down if you feel like you need to. Pushing across the water to the Old Pier, Area 24, is supposed to be 1 Flicker Wisp, a low encounter of 60. A Flicker Wisp on its own is only trivial with a 24. So I added a second Flicker Wisp, but I made this one weak. Having 2 normal Flicker Wisps is above the experience rating and the threat level. So by making one weak, we've managed to basically condense it into a appropriate threat level and closer experience point award. Mr. Beak is a difficult one. Glenn's Workshop. Mr. Beak is notoriously dangerous. He's usually the first encounter the players will get to where they can be one-shot. This guy used to have the death trait here. He now has non-lethal, which is much nicer. He used to have the death trait. He used to be able to one-shot your players. The intended experience and threat level was a moderate level 80 fight. Not quite the case if he's one-shotting and full killing a player outright. Luckily, they have amended that to be non-lethal, but we still need to make sure we're getting that moderate fight with 80 experience. On his own, he is a low threat to 5 players with a 48 experience reward. I did toy with the idea of adding a giant fly in here. Maybe this is where the Mitflits got it from. That's something you can do, and maybe have them fly and Mr. Beak not necessarily on each of the sides, so they can attack each other if things go that way. But what I settled on was making him an elite, but reducing his armor class. As standard, his armor class is 22. By making him an elite, it should put it to 24. So what I did was reduce his armor class to 20 as standard, and then by making him an elite, it's pushed his armor class back to what it was before. This way, he's only getting more hit points, he's a bigger to hit bonus, and better skills. But other than that, better saving throws. He's still just as easy to hit as he would have been before we made him elite. So he just has more hit points to account for the fact there's a 5th player just wailing on him. With the Spooky Wisp Area 19, I opted not to make any changes here, because this little dude is more of a roleplay encounter. It does say if he is attacked, he will just run into the area with Mr. Beak, trying to lure them into a fire. He's going to try and steal the shiny and then try and run away with it. So I did not feel that it was appropriate to increase his experience, his difficulty as an encounter, because he's not really a fight. You'll still get the same experience either way, because the experience is dealt with as whether they fight him or make a deal, they get 40. So that is up to you to deal with. The last thing we want to do is look at the Gauntlight Cupola. Or Cupola, rather. The Gauntlight Cupola. Up here we have a Vampiric Mist. It's supposed to be a moderate 80 encounter. As standard, this would be a low 48 encounter. So what I did was make the guy an elite. And as you can see, that makes it moderate 64. This one I didn't mess with the armor class too much, because its armor class is already quite low. So it just has a lot of hit points. It can hit quite nastily. But yeah, he is going to be a nasty fight. He's supposed to be. A lot of people do mention, especially at level 1, he is hitting quite hard. My players are at level 2 at the moment, so take that for what you will. But yeah, that is how you turn the first floor of the Gauntlight into an appropriate encounter area for 5 players. hopefully that is helpful to you, and you can kind of follow that along, make the changes that you need to make. And yeah, if you did find this useful, drop a video a like, subscribe to the channel. We have campaign diaries coming out every other week, which are going over my adventure through the Abomination Vaults as I DM for my 5 players. This is our first time doing a Pathfinder 2e campaign. Everybody is absolutely loving the system, and hopefully, once we get deeper into this Abomination Vaults adventure path, they'll start seeing the cool elements of this story. So if you are DMing this as well, or you've DM'd it in the past, make sure to subscribe so you can keep up to date with them, and you can see how my party handle those regularly difficult encounters or those strange role-playing situations. Yeah, I do stream on Twitch during the weekdays, when I'm very erratic with that. But you can find links in the description to my Discord, my Twitch, my website, which has a lot of 5th edition homebrew content and setting content. But yeah, thanks so much. Hopefully this was useful. I'll see you soon for the next campaign day.